Hello, folks. Good afternoon or good morning to you or good evening, depending on what time zone you are jumping in on LinkedIn to watch us from. We are ultimately going to be talking about the technical program management role, but we give it a little bit of time for folks to kind of mosey on in. They might be hanging out on LinkedIn. They see this pop up on Omer or Mize, if that's even grammatically correct, or my LinkedIn, and they might want to jump in and join us as well. So, Omer, what you been doing the past couple days?
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Been busy with facilitating our Technical Program Management Institute's workshop. It's a certified technical program management boot camp. We've been working on it
Great.
for the last 18 months or so. We've been growing in popularity, so I've been busy last couple of days with public sessions. So great
Any interesting
attendance.
question? Any interesting questions?
Oh,
Anything? Anybody
yeah.
ask anything wild, goofy?
Oh yeah, there was someone who kept talking to us about like how the space of rooftops is the next thing after Gen AI that we need to be all super interested in. So
Rooftops.
yeah, I wasn't sure about what it was, but then we went down on a tangent and we kind of learned about this idea that we are envisioning flying cars, and in
Oh,
large cities, apparently now, like New York City, they're looking at renting out rooftop space for these vehicles to be able to land and treat them as like flying car stops. Think bus stops, but on rooftops.
oh
So
man, that's so cool. You get so many interesting people coming to those classes that you're going to find things that you never heard of before. So,
you never knew about it.
selling rooftop space for parking lot service.
Incredible, incredible.
So,
You know?
so we'll just give it one more minute to go here. Just checking to make sure we're running on LinkedIn desktop. So, what's your plans for the next couple of weeks? You do anything fun?
So I'm going to spend some time with my nieces. I'm really excited about that. One's 4, the other one's 1.
Oh
So that's going to
gosh,
be a lot of fun.
yeah.
Um, I do have a couple of things in terms of strategic partnerships that the Institute has been chasing. So there's a couple of deliverables before we get to the end of the calendar year. So I want to make sure we wrap those up.
Oh, you got
And
some work to do. You're going to be pushing it. You're driver. You're a driver. You're driving this thing. You're rocking.
it's really funny because I say this all the time. Someone at once at school told me if you leave it to the last minute, it only takes a minute. Now that's not the way I like people to live their lives, but you know what? Sometimes you got to push it. So.
All right. Looks like we are rocking and rolling live on all mediums. It's pretty amazing how long it takes to kind of get rocking and rolling. So we're going to jump into this thing now. And really, the most important question, my friend, CEO of the Technical Program Management Institute. What is technical program management? What the heck is it?
I love the question, right? So get asked this question quite a bit. So it's a new role, right? This title of a technical program manager. We look at it being used differently in different organizations, large tech organizations. Think Amazon's, Google's, Apple's, Meta's of the world, and then you have these large non-tech organizations that use tech for enabling their businesses. Right? Think the banks, insurances, healthcare companies. Right? They're all looking at the ability of an individual to be able to go beyond just traditional project management or traditional technical leadership, right? So the role is actually some sort of a blend of being a technologist, being able to manage large scale IT projects and programs, but then also have the heart and mindset of an agilist, right? So we at Technical Program Management Institute look at the science of technical program management as a cocktail of these 3 different elements, right? So being an agilist, being a technologist, and being a project or program manager. So the role's
Interesting.
relatively new, but it has been growing. So it's a triangular, 3 vertices. So with that comes in a lot of different elements of, hey, how technical do I need to be? How good do I need to be as a project or program manager? How
Well,
deep
let's jump at that first one then. How technical do you have to be?
Oh, great. Again, this is something that varies organization to organization, but our experience has been over time, the expectation becomes in most organizations that you hone your technical skills, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you may not have an engineering background, you may not be a software developer or a tester or a DevOps engineer per se, not a data scientist, but the better you upskill yourself in that realm, the more prominent, the more powerful you become in your role as a TPM. And think why, right? Traditionally, if you are a traditional project manager or a traditional agilist, let's say a scrum master, there was never an expectation that, hey, if a development team, an engineering team comes in and says, hey, it's going to take us about 2 weeks to build something, The expectation was a project manager, scrum master would be looking for opportunities to see if there is a way for us to optimize or get there faster by asking leading and powerful questions, which has been great. However, now the expectation is slightly different. Can we have a more in-depth technical conversation to try and define, hey, instead of building this out with this many journeys, can we look at what a true minimum viable journey might be? All right, can I go dive with some risk mitigation strategies by building something that is less of a technical footprint, less number of database tables, less number of store procedures, fewer API calls, make it more granular. And now those are the conversations that we're expecting these TPMs to be able to run. I look at it, the role of a TPM as an entrepreneur. So think about you wanting to run a lemonade stand.
Yep.
Right. So if you want to run a lemonade stand, does it mean that you need to be a farmer and then grow your own lemons first? Probably not.
Hope not.
Right. But you want to be in a space where if someone comes to you and says, I want to sell you lemons, but I want to sell you $9 per lemon, should be in a space to be able to say, shouldn't cost me $9 per lemon. Because if I
Yep.
built it myself or I grew it myself, it would cost me like 30 cents per lemon. Right. That's the skill set that we are really as an institute focused on making sure we upskill people and we talk to them about fundamentals of programming, object-oriented programming,
Yep.
right? The difference between classes and objects, right? So it goes way beyond just the theoretical knowledge of how do you manage risk, how do you communicate, which we
Yep.
also cover, right? Those are equally important elements. But this is where I think the institute does a great job, and the team that we've established over the last year or so is a combination of technologists, project and program management professionals, and some well-renowned agilists in the space.
So, what do you see from a project perspective? Do you want folks to be PMPs? Do they have to be a PMP? Now, I know your program provides PMI PDUs, which is really good connection for the community, but kind of give me a sense of that.
Well, another very interesting conversation, right? So we had an attendee yesterday, and they brought up the same question. Hey, how do you feel about me pursuing my Project Management Institute PMP certification? This individual had gone through the workshop. Now, I'm a big proponent of any certification workshop that you can learn from, right? So go out, attend any and as many workshops as you can. You learn a lot, both theoretical but then also a lot from instructors and the participants. Get to see a lot about how different organizations have embraced those pieces. So our expectation is that you are attending a role like this or catering to a role like this with prior experience in the form of one of these three roles at least. Ideally, you have had multiple different roles in your career where you might have been a PM, a program manager or a project manager at some point, then transition more into agile project management, agile delivery services, scrum mastering, agile coaching, and now are leaning more towards this technical program management. The second area that we see a lot in this first segment, we do see people who come in with prior knowledge of PMI, PMP, PMI, ACP, those types of skill set. If you have those, great, because they really help you with the building blocks, the foundations of good, solid theoretical program and project management.
Yep.
Because a lot of what we try to cover is things about how do you initiate a program, how is it different than initiating a project, what's the breadth of a program compared to the breadth of a project, right? How do you go about pulling up a tool like a smart sheet or an Excel file or a Microsoft project? We do these things hands-on in the workshop. We don't want people to just walk away with, hey, here's a PowerPoint slide deck, go, and we're going to talk about it theoretically. So we actually get hands dirty. Let's open up Smartsheet. Let's open up a Microsoft project, or for that matter, let's just open up a blank spreadsheet, right? But let's get into the habit of realizing, hey, this is how I'm going to map out my predecessors and my successors. This is how I'm going to build out a Gantt view. A lot of which I think the Institute PMI has done a very good job of trying to inculcate into organization and project management professionals. So a lot of
Yeah,
value.
and they're definitely more open to the fact that it's not just the waterfall method, and a project manager is going to have to come in with lots of different tools in the toolkit, and being technical and being a technical program manager is just one of those. I personally, in this industry, see a nice building block of having your PMP, and as you're morphing into more software projects, coming and getting your technical program management experience as well. To me, it makes a very good connector as I work with you at the Institute as well. So, one of the things that excited me about, our conversations early on was around this idea of where this title was coming out of. and what companies have been really generating and looking to this title in this role as a potential supporter to help keep competitive and help build things of value. So give me your thoughts on that.
So, this is if someone asked me this question when we first envisioned the institute in 2021, the answer would have been very probably a lot smaller or a lot shorter than what it is today. The role actually has been envisioned in the West Coast companies. So think your Fangman organizations. Think about the Metas, the Apples, the Googles, the Amazons of the world, the Twitch, the Netflixes of the world, right? So, and part of the reason why is in these organizations with experience over there, personally, I can say, there's a lot of autonomy, a lot of trust that gets placed on an individual who takes upon these roles. And with that, there is a lot of expectations, right? So it's the same Spider-Man quote, like with great responsibility or great power comes great responsibilities, right? So
Mhm.
similar idea. And over time, what this has now evolved into is if you start looking at some of the largest banks in the country. So I'll drop a name, for example, Capital One Bank.
Yep.
Right? Capital One Bank is exclusively hiring technical program managers now. Right. And I wish I could say it's like they just hired one, they just hired two. No, we know the people we're hiring. We've talked to people over there. And I can tell you they've hired double digit project technical program managers in the last 3 to 5 months. Right. So you can just imagine at the scale at which they have taken on this transformation.
So you're
About
starting to see it move from the technology companies in Silicon Valley areas now going to the more established, large financial institutions, folks who, their whole livelihoods wrapped around the software systems that they manage.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's not just limited to financial institutions. So we just had a director of technical program management start working with us. And one of her concerns was, hey, we have about 40 individuals in the team right now that are agilist, traditional project managers. And the direction from our new CTO is, hey, we need to become a TPMO, a technical program management organization. So how do we upskill our people? How do we hire new people? And we have a path of going from 40 to 100 in the next 24 months. So they're planning on hiring another 60 TPMs just to keep up with the
Yep.
current workload, right? So their expectations are massive. So it's going beyond the West Coast companies, the Fangman organizations. It has been adopted, and the growth has been massive, right? So if you were to trust analytics tools that are out there, there's been more than 60% growth year over year in the number of roles that have been listed on popular job portals with the role of a TPM in the last 3 years recurring, right? So that's
What's
a massive
interesting,
number.
yeah, that's massive. That's a great snapshot into, the progression of the position. So one of the things you talked about early on was this triangle. The idea you got the program skills, the tech skills, and the agile skills. Then you started talking about organizations kind of retrofitting their agile people. So how does this fit in with agile? And we know there's been a lot of changes recently here in the agile marketplace. A lot of people getting rid of their agile organizational structure and trying to streamline. So what are your thoughts there? What have you been seeing, and how does it fit in with the whole agile thing?
Yeah. So, this is another very interesting topic because as part of the institute, we actually have relationships where we talk to a number of leaders in the space in some of these large tech and non-tech organizations. And when we're having these conversations, that's one of the more buzzing topics that we are always keeping an ear out for. When you start think of an example like a Highmark Health or a Capital One for that matter, right? Like these organizations went out on a limb and said, hey, we're going to transition from our agile PMOs, our agile center of excellences, ACEs, and other acronym offices that they might have set up, and we're moving away from this. So there have been a number of different drivers based on our conversations, based on prior experiences of the team that we have built as well. And David, it really comes down to one major thing in our experience, at least, and that's accountability. Organizations are now looking at this role of a TPM as someone who is going to be accountable.
Actually
And
doing real work, you saying,
re-
so that just managing a process or coaching a
managing
group?
managing the delivery, really, right? Managing
Mhm.
the delivery. Now, at no point are we saying that the expectation of the TPM is to roll up their sleeves, go into portal.azure and start configuring new servers or app services. That's not the expectation. However, the expectation is that this individual is technically competent enough they can rally the dev teams, the engineering teams, to make sure they are putting in the right metrics in place, the right monitorings and logging in place, and then they are owning the overall delivery and not just relying on, hey, my product team was supposed to give me requirements, but I didn't get them. Right. So as opposed to what the traditional roles have been more around is, hey, who's responsible for requirements? Who defines the vision? Oh, it's the business. That's
Mhm.
no longer the case. That's no longer the expectation. The expectation is, hey, as a TPM, I'm part of the vision setting exercise. Yes, the business, the product teams, the product managers, the product owners, they help define, and they are the ones where the buck stops on those things. But the TPM is a informed, a consulted party on a RACI matrix in those activities. And they
Mhm.
are helping define, as what we are calling in the institute now, MVFP, right? Not just minimum viable product, but minimum viable feasible product, right?
Okay,
Something
that's
that is
interesting. So you
something that
see, do
Mhm.
you see folks having a little bit more? Are these folks having a little bit more of a product mindset within their management of the programs they do?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And the way, you've most people have heard of the project to product mindset shift.
Hmm.
What we at the institute are really trying to get the movement now going towards is program to entrepreneur mindset, right?
Okay.
Not just project to product mindset, but more program to entrepreneur mindset. When you start thinking programs, right? So I'll give you a good example of this, right? So you probably have a Netflix subscription, right? So
Hmm.
I'm hoping most of the listeners, if not Netflix, that you have some subscription was for a streaming service. Netflix last year in 2023 went out on a limb and said, hey, we're going to have ads revenue coming in, right? So they introduced a new subscription model where they said, hey, we're going to introduce ads. So think about if you are a technical program manager at Netflix, which, by the way, in some cases, they pay up to almost $1 million a year to their TPMs. Right. So
Hmm.
if you come in as a technical program manager for the program of rolling out ads as part of a subscription model, right? Think about what the expectation for a role that could be paying you about $1 million a year, what the expectation needs to be. It's got to be beyond, hey, I'm waiting for my product team to give me a vision statement. Cannot be that. Their
Yeah.
expectations, and rightfully so, are we're going to look at someone like a investment, like a VC fund into an entrepreneur startup. Now, this person's or this team's responsibility is to make sure when we go out with this ad subscription model, it is not just successful from a revenue perspective, it is successful from a customer experience perspective, it is successful from a scalability perspective. So we're working on a case study on that specific one. So I'm very passionate about that specific,
Yeah, it's a
right?
real interesting perspective. It's the
Yeah.
idea of saying, okay, I didn't get the information. I'm just orchestrating to
Mhm.
I'm driving and I'm
Yeah,
driving the ship. And since I'm
that's it.
driving the ship, I got to make sure everything goes
That's it.
and I got to make sure the thing actually works. I mean, as a
Yeah.
business owner myself, and you're a business owner too, I mean,
Yeah.
that's the job.
Yeah.
So in some cases, maybe a technical program manager is much like not just an entrepreneur, but a small business owner too.
Yeah. And now think about it, David, right? So go back to the same example of the Netflix subscription with ads for a second. Now, let's say the subscription with ads is $8.99, and the
Yep.
subscription, the premium subscription without ads is, let's say, $14.99. So it's a $6 bump up from a regular subscriber. Now, if you're as a technical program manager, you should be having these conversations with your business partners. Hey, what's the right price point? Is it
Yeah, what's the price
8.99?
elasticity of demand associated with ads versus, how much can you pull out of someone before they're not going to want the ads, right?
That's right.
What's the
Right. Like,
highest point by which you can get to? Yep.
exactly, right? And now, as a technical program manager, your job cannot be pricing is responsibility of business. Whatever business tells me, I'm going to do. You have a seat at the table. You're driving these conversations. Hey, what levers am I going to put in place that are going to help me drive? We started at 8.99, but we're not seeing conversion. Let's go to
Yep.
6.99.
Yep.
This is where the role of a TPM is so critical as an entrepreneur. Think like an entrepreneur. If you have a lemonade stand which you're running from 4 a.m. to 5:30 a.m., what's the traffic going to look like,
Yep.
right?
Yeah, it's gonna be
Versus,
great, man. Gonna have all those people from the factory coming in who are drunk, or you put them in front of the bar so they can hydrate. I'm just teasing. You're
right,
exactly right. They're
right.
probably gonna be
So
nobody.
that's it, right? So you got to start
Nobody.
thinking like that. You got to start thinking. This is why you would also ask the question, like, where does the agile element come to it, right? So
Yeah,
at the
and
end of the
where
day,
does
we're still running with.
and is this gonna replace Agile?
So I don't look at this as a replacement of agile. I think of
Oh,
this as the
I was waiting to give you some. I wanted to see if you gave me some friction so we get some people agitated.
Oh, that's
Keep
funny.
going.
That's
I'm
funny.
sorry for interrupting. Go
No, no,
for
no, no. It's great because a lot of people have been asking us about this, right? Does this mean there's no more agile? Think about what agile was meant to be and is expected to be, right? It was supposed to be about, hey, how can we build things iteratively? How can we get to market faster? none of those things go away with the role of a technical program manager or this movement of technical program management, right?
Mhm.
To us, technical program management is the right next step as part of the evolutionary process. It's funny because, as part of the workshop that we run, we talk about the history of technical program management. It's funny, most people won't know this. Mid 1960s, there was a book called TPM's Guide to Survival. Right,
Mhm.
that's the first time the role actually was envisioned or coined. Technical Program Manager's Guide to Survival, Melville Zimmerman. Right,
Yep.
so you go all the way back into when the manifesto first came out in 2001. The idea was, hey, how can we get to market faster? And we had these 4 values, and then the 12 principles, all of these things that come into picture. Now we're about 20 years ahead, right? Just over 20 years ahead. And the industry especially is driven by these West Coast companies, these fangman organizations. They're looking at, hey, how do we become more delivery centric? How can we make sure that we are delivering work faster, producing high quality artifacts, and how are we thinking like a business, right? That mindset shift from just a project to product, more so from project to business, is what's driving this need. As a business owner, you're constantly struggling with so many different things, right? As a
Yep.
business owner, when you're starting and you're small, who's your sales and marketing lead? It's you. Who is your social media expert? It's you.
You.
Who's
Yeah.
your salesman? It's you.
Yep.
Who is your actual MVP who's going to do the work? It's you, right? And as you start scaling, you will start putting a team, and an expansion and breadth starts happening. It's the same exact structure that we are seeing in this role of technical program management. Now, does it mean, is it a replacement of some roles? Yes,
Yeah.
that we are already seeing in the industry, right? So we are currently working with a very large energy company, and one of the things that they just started working towards is they are offsetting some of the existing agile scrum masters. And
Yeah.
what I mean by offsetting is they're either leveling them to become upskilled in different roles, either in the form of a technical program manager or in business analyst or some other project coordination type of roles, wherever they see fit. And then unfortunately, some people will not be able to make the cut, right? And as
Yeah.
part of that, the role that they have introduced now is technical program manager. And it's not just one role, right? Where, hey, very rarely, and we've seen leveling in the agile organizations as well, where you have a scrum master and then you have a senior scrum master. But
Yep.
here in program or technical program management, what we're seeing is the leveling is along the lines of technical program manager, senior technical program manager, principal technical program manager. And to
Okay.
get to that principal level is where we see a lot of ability for individuals to go deeper in a specific domain. That's the other thing we recommend a lot, and that's what we are actively working on between now and 2025 is understanding domains. So for
Yeah.
instance, right now we have a certification boot camp that we do for 3 half days where we teach fundamentals of software development, object oriented programming, high level
Yep.
system design, scalability, resilience, fault tolerance, cap theorem. On top of that, we go through basics of project and program management, risk
Yep.
mitigation, RAID log, RIDE acts, defect triaging, all of these things, communication, how do you write memos, all of these things we cover. Right? The next step for us has been, and we're actively working on the next 2 workshops. The first one is infrastructure and networks, right? So if you want to be an advanced technical program manager who wants to understand technical skill sets and capabilities in 4G, 5G, IoT, all these types of network infrastructure elements, great. That's a workshop for you. If you're targeting a job with large network organizations, think your telco companies, your T-Mobile, your Verizons, your
Yep.
Palo Alto networks, your Cisco's of the world,
Yep.
great workshop for you
Your
to attend.
internet working companies, but not be
Internet.
spinning and say, okay, I bet you the second one is AI.
That's right. You got it. Right. That's right. So
So
what gave that away?
why separate AI? So it's got software elements associated with it, right? But why? What's the mindset about separating AI from the core one?
So, that's a great question, David. And the number one reason why that is the case is that's where the spend right now is across every organization. So
Yeah.
I just happened to have been at a conference earlier this year where we heard Gartner presented the metrics about how less than 1 in 5 AI initiatives, generative AI initiatives, is expected to reap the returns that have been originally estimated for those initiatives. Less than
Yeah.
1 in 5. So a lot of organizations, they're spending millions of dollars right now to get on the bandwagon of generative AI solutions, generative AI capabilities, use cases, and so on. Where the struggle is is this a use case that's even fit for purpose? That's where the conversation needs to start. Unfortunately, in most cases, what's happening is, hey, we just want to start using something so that we can start saying, hey, we've integrated generative AI in our tool set. Now, I don't blame organizations for it, right? It's the right thing for us to be able to do. The possibilities are endless,
Yeah.
and the return on that is amazing, right? So I'm really pro ethical generative AI.
Of
However,
course.
you need to be staffed appropriately and you need to be skilled appropriately.
Well,
So it goes.
the comments here is that it looks like the capex for over the next 5 years for AI hardware alone and systems is like $1 trillion, and
That's right.
certainly that's why the magnificent seven in the market
Yeah,
and the Nvidias and now the Broadcoms of the world, they're talking about that being the next Nvidia, is really racking up on their valuations because of that level of capex that's out there and expectations to spend. And we both know based on that, there's always expectations of inefficiency. So we only got about 4 minutes remaining. So with that 4 minutes, there's so much to talk about. We're certainly gonna have a lot more sessions, a lot of them driving from your personal profile and the Institute's profile. Tell me about the Institute. Give me 3-4 minutes on the Institute.
so we've been super blessed. I think in the last 12 months or so, the institute has grown. We have a small team of a growing team of instructors that have been very kind in giving their time and making themselves available and helping us build content. The institute's vision is very clear, David. Every IT project should be run by a technologist. So our goal, our mindset is very clear. If you're running an IT project or a program in the role of a project program manager, you need to have fundamentals of technology in your DNA. And that's what the Institute is all about. Our goal is to upskill project managers, agilists, scrum masters on the technology element, and the technologists, the dev leads, the software engineers, the DevOps engineers on the project and program management elements. Because in a perfect world, this role, like we said before, is a combination of those three elements, being a technologist, an agilist, and a PM. So that's what the institute is all about. We've been growing. We're running workshops right now. Our public schedule is out there for 2025. We've had to limit it down to one workshop a month from the public scale, just to manage some on-site demand. And we continue to grow. I think that's the big thing.
And of
Um,
course, there's a certification after course delivery, correct?
That's right. That's right. So it is a certification. We are working with several organizations right now to get this as a must-have certification if you're applying for these jobs as well. So that's the next thing from an institute perspective. We're working with human resources departments in several organizations where we're going through the vetting of content so that it becomes something that is not just an upskilling enablement, but also a major desire for entities, organizations to hire people who have gone through this fundamental workshop. So that's the other piece
Yeah,
that we're actively working towards.
it's incredibly exciting, and you know, within the industry, people should be fired up because trade associations like yours basically drives job growth and fat salaries, as you were talking about with Netflix, which drives IT professionals to grow and really achieve their goals, financial goals, their actualization goals around their skills and their whole persona, right? Their whole view of themselves, both from a skill use perspective, a financial perspective, and also a ability to be empowered to actually cause some change and do some cool things. So, kudos to the institute, kudos to jump and go after this hot new thing and help companies deploy it appropriately. Omer, I really appreciate your time. Thank you, Mr. Hassami, the CEO of the Technical Program Management Institute. I appreciate your time. You'll be hearing a lot more from him, that's for sure. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, David, and happy holidays.